Almost 3 weeks ago, we released our second game on Steam, Unicycle Pizza Time, which is a precision platformer streamer-based style of game that we made in just 1 month. And that 1 month included marketing the entire game. So a question that you also had, of course, is how did you do that? Because if we look at the stats here, 88% positive ratings with 87 reviews. If we look at the total sales, we've made a few $1,000s at this point. I think this is for a 1 month of work. This is some very good stats. So a lot of people are like, hey Marnix, what did you do marketing your game? And that's what this video is going to talk about. We didn't do that many different things of marketing. We didn't do things like demos. We didn't do things like fests. We only did one thing. I'll talk about that in a second. Gotta make sure you're gonna keep watching. But before that, I want to say, do not take this video as a blueprint to marketing. We made a lot of mistakes because we made this in 1 month and we only had 2 weeks between the Steam page being actually live and the game being released, because that's the bare minimum that Steam requires you to have. You can't ship a game faster than that. And even then, like, the one thing that we did use was influencer marketing, and we only had 3 days between our build for them being ready and the game actually releasing. So once again, there's too little time everywhere. This is not a how-to. This is still to give you an idea of what did we do. There are some good things that we did, but this is not what you should blindly copy, assuming it's gonna get you to the #1 of new and trending, because that's what it did for us. There was a lot of luck involved with this as well. And I think that there were some things that we could have done better as well. But I think the first thing that I want you to understand as well is that, hey, marketing the game, sending things to influencers, doing Steam fests, everything you see Crisostomo talk about basically, it's all nice and well, but the main thing actually is not, hey, how much you have to spend on an ad for the Summer Game Fest, for example, or how many influencers you can pay or send emails, or how many events you can go to something like Gamescom and have a booth there. No. Those things will, of course, impact your marketing, of course, and how many wishes you can get. But the biggest decision, and this is gonna hurt for a lot of you guys to hear, is the genre of game you take and the style of game that you take, like the visuals. We went into this game with the approach of, we have 1 month, we have to market this as well as possible. And we basically just looked at, okay, what is an art style that sells the most? So that's why we ended up going with 3D, like high poly, like PBR style. Then also we looked at, okay, what are some games that are really good for people to play and have create content about? Because that's what we wanted. Our main approach was going to be content creators, so we should make games that I, as a content creator, also understand certain topics perform way better, certain styles of videos perform way better than others. Like, for example, videos about, hey, how much we earned, or absolute beginner videos, if I look at my channel, will always get more views than like some of the more boring and like in-depth topics. So knowing that YouTube game and knowing that at the end of the day, other content creators are tied to the algorithm as well, and they want their videos to perform well. So you as a developer have to make games that will give them that performance basically. And that is why we ended up making a more of a streamer-based game, because the entire thought here was we want to make great content. It's going to elicit a lot of like reactions, it's going to be very visual, and also it's someone on a unicycle. You have to assume that, hey, not only are people going to watch like full-length videos, but maybe they'll drop into a live stream and they need to very quickly understand what is this game about. They need to be hooked just from watching the game. Like, visuals do a lot, as well as, hey, you have this unicycle. Why is there a unicycle here? It immediately gives that effect. So those were some of the decisions that we made when originally starting with this idea. I know some of you guys are like, oh my God, this is so soulless. Like, I'm gonna keep working on my 2D Metroidvania that talks about dealing with like loss or grief or whatever, because I believe that is the game that I want to make. That's fine by me, but understand that going in and marketing that game, or marketing a game that just doesn't look good, marketing a game that is very basic, it's 2D. 2D does so much in like your game being unmarketable basically. And I know it sucks to hear, but it's unfortunately the truth, because you're a developer. We weren't selling our games to developers. We were selling our games to normies who do not care about us being the developer at all and all of that. So at that point, then you go for the higher poly style and you go for the more casual genres. There is definitely value in like more niching down and getting specific art styles, but it's not going to be the play if you want to do these short cycles. Okay, with that very long-winded intro out of the way, but this is honestly the most important thing of marketing, choosing that right genre and that like right game basically, is influencers. I believe, and I've always been believing this for a long time, but this was the game where I really got to try it out, is I believe the most effective and the like S-tier marketing strategy is simply having a game and then letting other people play it and use their audiences to promote your own game. So you often hear this of like people who are like, hey, should I start a YouTube channel that you, as the developer, start to promote my game, or should I start my own TikTok and all of that? And it's like, yeah, you could do that. The big problem you have there is you don't have an audience. But there's a lot of people on YouTube who play maybe games similar to what you're making, who do have an audience, whether that's 1,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers, or even millions of subscribers. And it's much more return on investment by just lucking yourself into getting covered by one of those bigger streamers and then getting tens of thousands of views when all you had to do was just make a game that was interesting and send an email. And that is all we did basically in terms of promoting our game. Sure, we made our own devlog, which was like, we made the devlog not really to market our own game, but more just to show you guys like, hey, there's something we're working on. It was not our main goal to get wishlists, because we only got about 170 from our devlog, which sounds nice, but it wasn't that much. Now, I think also maybe one thing to say as well before we get too driven into the wishlist number is, I made this brilliant post. Even though we've sold over 2,000 copies, when we launched our game, we only had 500 wishlists, which by all means should mean our game is dead on arrival and there's no possible chance of success. You hear this often where it's like, oh, you need 7,000 wishlists before you can even consider releasing. And I think for the most part that is true. I think we kind of were able to break out of this purely because of two things. First of all, we got lucky with the new and trending. That is one thing, but then how did we get on the new and trending in the first place? We made a game that thrived on virality, basically. Like once someone saw it, you have this whole waterfall. And that's what happened as well if you go and look just on YouTube at all of the like pieces of content made about Unicycle Pizza Time. Like you'll see a lot of this is Japanese. We really struck a Japanese audience for some reason. Talk about it later as well. But like all of these pieces of content came out pretty quickly after launch. We only had one piece of content really that came out before launch, and then on launch, because the game was so like appealing to streamers, people still ended up playing the game, and we got a big boost when we look at our wishlist actions here of like 500 and then another 770 in the first 2 days because we had that viral. This is not something that you can immediately plan for. It's not something you can fully reproduce, but certain genres, once again, will be better than others. Now, I made a video about this entire process about, I think 4 or 5 months ago, that goes super in depth on, hey, how do you get influencers? How do you contact them? How should you structure your emails and all of that? I'll link it up there. It's a really good video, but I want to give a quick rundown once again of how do you do it? Because this is also a way of marketing that doesn't cost you any money, basically. All you need to do is find that big list, create it yourself most likely, and then send out a few hundred emails, ideally, and wait. And all of that you can do in like 48 hours. And that's your entire marketing strategy, basically. Could be that, and would be fine already. As you can see here, this is the Excel list that we had for ourselves, where you're going to compile all possible YouTubers who play similar games to yours, and you're like, hey, this would be a good fit for them to play my game. Now, you can see like some of these are very big, like there's people like Forsen, Queso, like they have millions of subscribers, but some of them are also much smaller. Like here, for example, we have some with 15,000 subscribers. Anything I would say from like 5,000 is worth it. You can send to less than 5,000 subscribers as well, but it becomes very much a more limited return on investment then. Like at the end of the day, getting the keys to send out to influencers is still very cheap because you don't pay anything, you just click a button on Steam. But you're going to just go through all of YouTube, scour everyone you can find and put them in the list, and then yeah, you get a final big list. Like here we have a bunch with like 9,000 and whatever, and you're going to contact all of them. I've got the keys and the emails blocked out in this Excel list because that's not really what I'm supposed to be sharing with you, but you just go through this. I gave 2 keys as well. Normally can you do just 1, but because we have a 1 to 4 player co-op game, I figured I would send 2. And then once you have those YouTube channels, you want to get their email. And how you do that is, if you're on YouTube, there's this very easy thing that you can do. As you can see on my screen right here on Bite Me, you can go to like the About section, there's channel details, you can click view email address, and voila, you can contact someone. Our primary form of contacting people was just using email, and you can do things like Twitter DMs as well. It's something I personally didn't have any experience with beforehand, and everyone I wanted to contact, basically, I could find emails for through YouTube, so I didn't need to. But if you want to go for like super high volume, it's definitely something you can try out as well. And then you just want to send them an email. This is an email that I sent out. We got a response for. There was content made by this. So this is the basic template that we made. And this is not good. I'll talk about in a second what I was actually still missing here. But it's like, hey, name, I'm part of this indie studio and we're working on our own game. And you give a very, very short pitch, like 1 or 2 sentences. And then we gave some information of like, hey, is there an embargo or anything? We put it in here of like, hey, look, you can already create content about it. Know that these things will most likely still change before the game fully releases. We gave the 2 codes, put the code in the email already. Some YouTube content creators themselves, they even say like in the title, put like, hey, key inside. I think what I more believe, and this is like kind of my sales experience from my previous life coming in, is don't just title your email of like new upcoming game, but here it's like, are you a unicycle pro? Like you wouldn't know. This is kind of a clickbaity email title. That's more of the idea that I have for Forge Industry, with a similar thing where it was like, we reached out to automation YouTubers and then we told them like, hey, conveyor belts suck. We've got something better. And that's the title we use there. I think that is more appealing than just being like very generic, like key attached, new roguelite game coming out or something. I think this is better. This is my personal opinion. I don't know the exact thoughts of real actual people who just play the content. Maybe if they watch this video at one day they can comment. But what was this email missing? And it is something that I only started doing after I'd already sent out basically 100 plus emails. A press kit. Basically, what is a press kit if you've never heard of it before? This is a press kit. It's just like a single big piece of information that you feature, like some GIFs, you feature the trailer, you feature some screenshots. If someone wants to create content about your game, or for example, for YouTubers, this is very important, thumbnails, then you want to give them your press kit, because what we included here is we included the high quality logos of the game, we included the font basically that we use for the logo if they want to reproduce, and we had like these funny like cutout images of the unicycles as well, which you will see some people actually ended up using in their thumbnails here. And it helps a lot in making more custom, because otherwise what they'll do is they'll just go to your Steam page and they'll take like one of the screenshots and have to overlay their own stuff on it. It's not always as engaging. Also, if you have things like good capsule art, put the capsule art in the press kit as well. I'm using a tool called Press Kitty by Impress Games, which is completely free. I talked about them in a previous video, and it's very easy to just create your own little press kit. So there's a link down below to that. But having that press kit was definitely a worthwhile addition that we should have done. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you have these YouTubers, and it's something that I personally also want to tell people who are like, hey, I want to do influencer outreach, is don't get stuck on the subscriber number. Like you'll see, like, of course, we start a big list with like a Queso, a Quesonat, a Forsen, whoever, like the big YouTubers, because if they cover your game, perfect, you're good then, right? The problem is, and this is generally around the 100 to 150,000 subscriber mark, is you'll start running into this. And that's called agencies, where, hey, you send an email, but you're not sending an email to the talent itself anymore. Like if you send an email to talent directly, the chance of you getting covered is infinitely higher than if they're using someone like Mythic Talent or GG Talent Group, like agencies that or become the gatekeeper between the influencer and whoever wants to do sponsorships and whatever. And their job basically is to earn money for the influencer, which means that, hey, you will get emails like this where it's like, hey, thank you for reaching out, but do you have any budget for money? Because realistically, if you don't give them a bag of money, and we're talking about multiple thousands of dollars here at a minimum, then we can't guarantee you any coverage. And it's like, yeah, maybe we'll play it one day, and you can, it gets, if you're lucky, but there's no planning at this point. So you're much more shouting into the void by going to the people with more than 100,000 or like 150,000 subscribers, or basically just anyone with an agency like managing them, versus finding direct emails of people basically. And yeah, that's basically the main thing of how did we do our outreach. It wasn't that hard. Now, one question that I did get a lot as well is, how do you approach the Japanese streamers? Because this is actually kind of a funny one, where Japanese streamers and Japanese VTubers, which is most of the content creators as you can see here, and these VTubers actually have a bit of the same problem, or you'll encounter the same problem as with regular US streamers that I just said, the agencies. It's even worse in Japan, because even YouTubers with like 5,000 and less subscribers are often part of talent agencies. It's part of the culture here to have usually somewhat predatory agencies that take like 70% of all the money you take, but you have to go through them. There's no good contact email. It's like all Japanese forms. I didn't want to bother with that, which is also why we originally didn't reach out to a lot of Japanese people. We reached out to, I think this is like 7 or 8. Up until here, like the first 70 we did before launch. And out of that, we got lucky because there was one called Tomari Mari, and they are a like independent VTuber, so we could contact them directly. And then we got lucky because then it snowballed, and other agencies actually reached out to us and were like, hey, what are the rules and regulations about the game? Do you have press kits? Do you have codes or whatever? And we got lucky that way. But contacting them directly, the agencies, was not gonna go anywhere. So once again, you need to get lucky to a certain degree. I don't want to attribute all of this to luck, by the way. A lot of this is just putting in the effort, and the more emails you send, the more chance you're gonna have of being lucky. I think it's not just that, oh, you just got covered. It's like everyone can get covered, and having one good piece of coverage can often do a lot for your game. It can make or break your entire marketing campaign almost. But that's basically how you do the Japanese YouTubers. It's, I think maybe a good one is if you want to find out how do you find Japanese YouTubers, you can see it in my history here. We've looked at a similar game, Stretcherman, which was the closest in terms of like when it released compared to ours, because games like Only Up, they're like 2 years older, YouTube changes a lot. What you do to find Japanese YouTubers is you write the name of your game, and then what you can see here in the katakana is game. And if you just look up this, you're gonna find Japanese YouTubers, Japanese influencers playing your game. And then once again, it's very easy. Like for example, I did it here with Konta, I think. You open their channel, you go to the More tab, you click on the like more about this channel, and then voila, you can get their email address. It's very easy that way, and you just have to send them the email then later on. So this is how you do it for Japanese YouTubers. There are other ways to do it for like other languages, but I was focusing mainly on US, a little bit on France, and then also Japanese as our big-ish targets basically. If you have more localized languages, of course, you can do like Turkish. We have some Indonesian streamers. For the Japanese ones, one other thing maybe that is interesting to say is the emails that I sent, they were in Japanese, but I just used ChatGPT to translate it. It was not rocket science, basically. Then one other thing that I want to cover, because it's the first time that we were using it now with our influencer campaign, is this other tool called CoverageBot by, once again, the same people who made PressKit, Impress.games. And what they do basically is they track all of the content being made about your game, basically. Like every time a video comes out or like a tracking, like you don't manually have to look for, are people making content about my game? You get notifications, they track it, or like, for example, are there articles, are there links from Reddit, for example, going back to your store page? It's very easy here to track all of that, basically. And I think generally this was a pretty good tool. And the big thing I like is, as you can see here, you get notifications when people are live streaming, basically. It's like every time a new piece of content releases or a new person starts live streaming, you immediately get a notification and a link of, hey, this person is streaming. And it's something that helped us a lot as well of, hey, you can just hop into their chat. You don't have to manually refresh all the time. Hop into their chat, talk with them. Just being a very human developer at the end of the day, especially at least with the Japanese influencers I did the most there, can help a lot in just getting more sales, because you're not just soulless developer, like interacting with people. It does a lot still in getting a little bit extra sales, getting a little bit extra reviews. So I think the CoverageBot is pretty good. We also have an affiliate code if you want, that is like 10% discount if you use code BITEME10. I'll put it up here somewhere. First, when I first got this, I was like, ooh, I don't know if it's gonna be worth it, but now it has made it a lot easier to track when things are going on. And especially like this also allowed us to find some other things that are not just YouTube videos, but I want to talk also, it's a good segue into press coverage, because 80 Level, which is like a press thing for game stuff basically, they covered our game. Once again, we knew from it because we got the notification of like, hey, new article about Unicycle Pizza Time. We did not reach out to 80 Level. Basically, like press was not really a core focus of us. Of course, I made a video once again half a year ago where I went to a Japanese press company, Automaton, and I talked about, hey, how do you approach press? How does the entire process work basically? I have mixed feelings. I think press is not for our style of game. If you're making like more of the cozy games and more of the visual games, you can try press. The problem is also if you go to like a YouTube video, you can see how many people actually watched it. With press, all of that information is hidden basically. So often you'll have like press and it's like 10 people may have read it. And other times like maybe 10,000 people may have read it. Who knows? So it wasn't our core focus. I did reach out to one person, and that was the guy that I did the interview with, Karase from Automaton. And they wrote a pretty good article. Of course, it's all in Japanese, so good luck. But this was pretty popular as far as I can tell from like Twitter interactions and things like that. Did this help a lot? I don't know. Probably like one influencer covering our game would have done about the same, but it's still nice. The structure for this email was a bit different. It was like, hey, we've met before, and it's like, hey, this is the story. So we link to like our devlog of we're making the game in 1 month. This is the game. Give it a spin, basically, was what we did. And of course the pitch, and then they wrote the article on their own. Like once again, you don't ever have guarantees that you'll have coverage either from influencers or press, but if you can try, it's always worth it, because at the end of the day, this is still free. You're not paying anything to get this coverage. You just have to send some emails. Now, what would I have done differently? Because of course we did a whole bunch of stuff, some good, some bad. There were two main problems or two things that I would change personally if I had to do this again. The first thing that I didn't do is start making that big influencer list early enough. Like right now, we're sitting at about 126 emails that like we've collected. I think that is still on the low end. I think ideally you want to go for 150, 200, and anything above that even better. Sometimes you'll reach a problem that, hey, this specific genre that I'm looking at, there's not even that many content creators who fit the bill. But still, the more you have, the more chances of getting lucky. Once again, a content creator picks up the game, makes a video about it, and you get the wish lists. So really, the earlier you start, because this will take some time and you have to scour YouTube and it's like, oh, this is boring, I don't want to do this. The earlier you start in collecting the emails, the better, because you'll just build up a bigger list. And then the second big mistake with it, but that is something that normally, hopefully you won't have, is only having those 3 days between having the build of our game that we could send out to streamers and actually, releasing the game. 3 days is not enough. We got lucky there that we had those streamers who could basically immediately get the email and be like, okay, I'm gonna play this tonight. You get lucky there. Normally, always I would say have 2 weeks, because that is the general amount of time that content creators need to have, like, go through their backlog, because like the first next few days are usually scheduled already. They have to record the video, they have to edit it, and then they have to like make thumbnails, titles. It takes time. So generally I would say at least 2 weeks in advance, send out those emails. If there's things like, for example, Steam Nexus and things like that, send them out even earlier, because my God, they are going to be so swamped with emails, with builds and things like that. Some of these, they get like 10 to 20 emails of other developers every day. So there will always be more games than they can physically cover. There's only 3 videos basically you can upload a day on YouTube before the YouTube algorithm severely punishes you. So it's just also, yeah, once again, I keep saying this, it's partially being lucky, but the more you send out, the more lucky you're gonna be and the more chance you'll get that someone covers your game, ideally before it releases, because then you can build up those wish lists. In our case, after it releases, it was still all right because it was like 2 days after release. So keep that in mind as well. Just do whatever I did earlier and do a lot more as well. Like, we didn't do the fests, but this doesn't mean, once again, that you shouldn't do fests. Join fests, join all of that. Do your best at marketing in different ways, of course, but I do think that influencers can like carry a very big amount of your marketing, and it doesn't even have to cost you anything. Anyways, I know the style and presentation of this video was a little bit different. If this was something that you're interested in, then of course, let me know. I'm always curious about your thoughts. I hope I taught you a bit more marketing wise, because it is the bane of a lot of game developers at the end of the day. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other questions, you can leave them in the comments down below, or ideally join our Discord, which is also linked down below, where I can just respond much faster and we have an actual conversation versus me just sending you like asynchronous messages once every so often. If you want more content like this, we upload 2 videos every week talking more about just things we learn, making our own games, the mistakes we make, and the wins we have sometimes as well. So be sure to head down below and subscribe if you haven't done that yet, because it really helps us out as well, because I like to see numbers go bigger as well. That's all from me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!